Hi, I'm Nairi. Today we're going to talk about Christmas and looking at tips around Christmas to help it be a really good experience for you. So if you're in the early days of adoption, then you'll find this video really useful, and if you check out my channel you will see some other Christmas videos on there. First thing that I want to cover with you is gifts for your adopted child. Think about gifts which are going to be gifts that you can interact with them. So when you're trying to help them heal over the trauma, having time with you and building an attachment with you is always going to be useful. So if you can get a hold of stuff that allows them to do role play with you, vets, doctors, nurses, hairdressers, shops, all those types of things are going to really help them. Sometimes you feel like you're buying the 100th cuddly toy, but I find particularly for my boys that they still like that comforting soft type of toy. And then finally I would say keepsake gifts are really good as well. So children won't be so enamored with them on Christmas morning because they'll look at them and realize they're not a toy, but things that are ornamental that they can put in their room that marks that first Christmas or second Christmas, and they can look back and remember that you gave them that gift, because toys go out of fashion and toys get lost and broken, but keepsake gifts don't. Now I want to talk to you about family and how to deal with family, especially if it's very early on. Now we have a huge family. I've got 7 children, so my boys are the 6th and 7th children, and so we have a lot of adults that come and go and visit us, and my mum comes. Really struggle with this, and my youngest son in particular really struggles with this because he just wants a day where he has us to himself, he opens all of his presents and we dedicate our whole day to him. That will be his ideal Christmas. But obviously Christmas is a family time. So my advice to you, if you can, is to extend the Christmas period and extend the family visits. So try not to have too many in the house at any one time. Try to spread it out. The number one thing to really watch out for is Santa. And Santa is supposed to be a really happy, friendly guy, but my foster children that are now my adopted boys were terrified of the fact that somebody might be coming in their room for obvious reasons. That's their history, that they would be terrified of an adult coming in their room. Play carefully around that one, and don't be afraid if you feel that your child is terrified to tell them that it's not real. That could mean that they tell a whole class full of children who aren't ready for it and are still 5 or 6 years old that there's no Santa. But I think you've got to think about your child and them dealing with the whole thing. If you can build up to Christmas and create a routine and tradition around the build up, that's going to make Christmases in the future much more enjoyable for you, because, well, Christmas in the UK anyway is very much 2 days solid of celebration, and then it feels like it goes flat between then and the new year. And I think actually that's quite intense, and it's quite a lot for families to cope with sometimes. Even families that haven't adopted, it's quite a lot with their children to cope with. So I would suggest like building up some really nice routines. So let me give you an example. You always do a Christmas cake together in November. You always put the tree up together early December. You always make mince pies a certain time. You invite certain friends around before Christmas, and you have some traditions that are very much about Christmas, but not over the 1 or 2 days, depending on how you celebrate Christmas, to take that intensity away. Another thing to be really careful with, especially if it's a very new adoption or if your child has not been in foster care very long and is coming to you quite quickly, is the food side. So for our children, food was a big issue anyway, and one of them was very unfamiliar with lots of foods and tastes. The other one was also, but would gorge and bingey and make himself sick. And occasionally we actually have still had that situation, because when food is laid out on the table and it's there to choose from and available, some children don't have a way of controlling that impulse to just eat everything on the table. And if your children have been neglected, this will definitely feature. They will either kind of very much control what they eat and potentially undereat, but most children overeat. So it will be useful for you to say to your child, this is your plateful that I'm helping you to choose, and now we're not going to have any more until we come to the next meal or the next snack time, and trying to help them with that, because they're not going to be able to do it themselves. I've already mentioned this, but it's really important to make time for them and not just your wider family. We have had conversations with our youngest child before who very much struggles with this anyway, because he gets very overexcited and agitated and stimulated, and we can't calm him down, particularly on Christmas Day. That's always the worst for him, when he knows there's lots of presents to open. So what we said to him a few years ago was, we will try and have half an hour at least, or an hour with you, where we come away with you into your room, or we look at some of your presents with you, and we have a calm down time that is just for you. So look at your day, your routine, or your Christmas Day and the 2 days, and have a look at how it's going to play out for you. Are you going to be busy from morning to evening on both days, or are there going to be absolute slots that you can have with your adopted child? Maybe you've already got biological children, maybe this is your second adoption, and so you already have a busy house. Have a look and see if you can find a time that you can just literally spend with your adopted child on their own, to help them to get through this time. So we all love Christmas, well, most of us do anyway. For some children, of course, it's not a time to be enjoyed, and I guess you've got to understand that for your child, if they've experienced some Christmases at home and you know there was domestic violence there, you know there were lots of issues around neglect and abuse, that it would have more or likely been exacerbated at Christmas time. You could be doing all the things that I'm saying and trying to put lots of measures in place and still find that your child doesn't entirely enjoy Christmas, or you can't put your finger on it. They don't seem quite right, they don't seem quite settled, and that could just be because they're in a new family with new traditions that they're trying to learn and understand. Our boys had never seen a Santa sack. They didn't really seem to understand what to do with presents. I've mentioned this on I've got my first experiences playlist, where I mentioned about what a first birthday was like and first Christmas was like. And I'm pretty sure that most of what we gave them to understand was new, and they seemed quite hesitant to move forward and do those things. And if I was to give myself some advice back, I would have really stripped it back and had it much lower key. I would have had less people around, less presents, and just generally less of a hubbub, less excitement, because for them, especially the first Christmas, it was just a little bit too much for them to handle. And so I hope that you find that happy equilibrium with your child. You find that happy level where you can enjoy it the way that you want to enjoy it, but you give them a Christmas to remember that they can enjoy too. I hope that really helps you. Check out my channel. There are so many playlists on there. There's stuff about Christmas, stuff about first experiences, but there's also stuff about attachment and bonding and parenting on there too. So thank you for joining me on Adoption with Nairi.